Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to see everyone on the live stream. And we've got the wonderful David Fox-Pitt, MBE, and Muriel Gibbons. And we're having a great debate about the weather before going live today, because in Scotland it's a bit glum at the moment, is it? In the Wirral it's a bit glum, and down south it's beautiful sunshine. So what else could we ask for? So what we'll do is we'll get started without further delay. So those of you who are just joining us as we speak, if you could very kindly introduce yourself in the chat, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And we've got a great show for you today, which I'm sure you'll thoroughly enjoy. And David's going to be talking about, or we're going to be discussing, about the importance of making a plan and just doing it. And to be frank, it's really on cue at this point, because as we move into what is a very new time, new world order as far as this is concerned, that one of the worst things we can do is actually sit on our hands. We should be taking very decisive action to take advantage of things as they open up and unfold, as it were. So with that, basically, as far as today is concerned, one of the things I'd urge you to do is to reach out to each other, do chat to each other in the chat. We would encourage you to also ask lots of questions, and remember, everything's should be built on a deep relationship of trust. It's absolutely vital that happens. And so tell us what you're passionate about, why you do it, and how you like to make a difference. And be bold with your questions. It makes it a good, fun session if people are very bold with those questions. So keep them coming. A very brief intro for myself. As I founded Business Growth Bureau about 7 years ago, I believe in the importance of circular relationships where everyone wins. And so rather than a win-win situation, which is invariably used by a large legal entity when you're dealing with a small one, and it actually doesn't mean win-win at all, it usually means win and lose. What I feel is if you actually look after all the stakeholders that you're working with, there be suppliers, your staff, your management team, your customers, your prospects, your investors, and so on, then you build a really strong organization. Muriel, do you want to give a very quick intro about yourself, if that's all right?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Those that don't know me, I'm Muriel. Have I got backfeed?
A tiny bit, but you're okay at the moment.
Yeah, okay. I've been working with Rupert for many, many years, and we both have something very strong in common, really, in that we love building relationships. We enjoy working with people and helping them to achieve their goals.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you very much, Muriel. And Dave, we'll come to you in just a moment, because I know we want to spend a bit of time with you as well. The other part, in terms of what we're all about, is we're very keen to work with clients to help them to optimize their business growth. And this is through a 7-part framework, which is very much about understanding your key numbers, building your strategic guidance systems, and what you can put in place around your value brand proposition. We all buy into our individual whys, and other people do. And then what your strategy you're putting in place to really amplify those brands. And then everything to do about the social selling blueprint, which is lead generation, prospect nurturing, sales optimization, so you have a good flow of new opportunities coming through. And also, how can you surprise and delight your clients so they also become active referrers and actually want to stay with you for the long term, if that makes sense. So let's get really to the meat of the interview today with David. And also, we've got a little bit of a special announcement at the end as well, which we'd love to share. Before we do that, let me just make sure that we've not missed anything in the chat, actually. Muriel, we've got Simon with us today as well. Welcome. We've got Renato, James. Oh, well, glad to see you online, James. So that's great news. And
there's more, but I think they're a bit shy.
Yeah, okay. We've got Mike G as well. So welcome. And do introduce yourselves in the chat. We'd love to hear from you and to ask those questions. So I think the important thing is to get down to speaking with David, because every time I speak with David, I can only be filled with total amazement. And I always put the call, when we finish the call, I tend to be totally uplifted and energized, because David has just endless amounts of energy. So David, could you tell us a little bit about you and what you're really passionate about?
I think David might have frozen, actually.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering that. So, this is
Well,
going to be
he's
one of
very
those
good at
awkward
keeping
moments.
still.
Okay,
There
well,
you
I'm going
go.
to do my best at explaining everything about David. And we'll do.
Okay, David's back now. We've got
All
him
right,
in.
good.
Yeah,
Hello,
there you
sir. Sorry about that. We had a little interlude, so hopefully that's me back again.
Okay, great. Yeah, I must admit you're a bit better looking in this form rather than the frozen picture that you were in before, David. So, I suddenly thought I might have to run this interview with myself, which could be slightly challenging, but welcome back anyway. So, yeah. So, David, I was just saying to everyone on this live stream today that every time I speak with you, whether it's on the phone or by Zoom, I come away feeling totally inspired and energized. And you only need to sort of hear and understand what you get up to every time. And I'm just amazed. But could you tell us, first of all, from a business point of view, who the real David is? And also, I'd love to really hear about some of the things that you've been working on in the last year or two, and perhaps how COVID has affected you, how you've been able to evolve moving forwards in terms of what you're doing now. Would you be able to share us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. Well, I live on the banks of Loch Tay, and you can see a lovely picture there of our quadrathlon, 400 quadrathletes about to set off a mile across Loch Tay in July. And we run a business called Wild Fox Events, and we've created over 17 major events over the last 25 years, raising in excess of 40 million. So the raison d'etre of what we do is we put on really challenging events, 24-hour events, 32-hour events, 12-hour events, and people raise money for charities. So that's my passion. So we're going to talk a bit about, having a passion. How do we get a passion? And incidentally, that passion didn't just come from just like that. It took, years of evolving to the passion of what I'm doing now. Yes, going back to COVID, it's been a very difficult year because obviously events like hospitality haven't been happening. But to put a positive side on it, and I think I mentioned this at my previous interview, we set up a charity called Siobhan's Trust. So, during lockdown, we delivered 60,000 grocery grab bags to doctors and nurses throughout Scotland. I was driving a Tesco delivery van around for 15 hours a day, working with the House of Brewer and Bookers. And that all came by the radios, interviews with nurses saying how furious they were with coming out from an 18-hour shift and nothing left in the shops. We thought, right, rather than clapping from the balcony, what can we do which is more proactive? So we got out of a Tesco's van, we linked up with Bookers and the House of Brewers, like the Harrods of the North, and we put these wonderful grocery grab bags together with 3 or 4 meals, lovely freshly made burgers, baked cakes, tins of sweeties and goodies, and we dished them out, and it put a massive smile on their faces. We also work with inner city schools in Dundee, got a community garden going. We're working with 100 families in Edinburgh and 100 families in Dundee with food packs, working with Fair Share and also with Bookers. So it's been a really positive year in a way. I've had a really fascinating insight into the inner cities. Life expectancy in some areas in Dundee is 45 years old. Can you believe it? This is United Kingdom, not Eritrea. And yes, so there's huge problems in our own cities, and in a way, it's been a real insight into that. And all it's confirmed is that we need to do a lot more in the inner cities. Because if we don't, it's just going to get worse. So if we can, we must. And obviously, we've had the Marcus Rashford about free school meals, which all stems from the inner cities as well. And so that's been a positive side of it. So I hope to do more. We host a lot of inner city kids at our location at Loch Tay. We've got 200 from British Schools Exploring coming up for the whole of August. So we've got 90 kids for the first 2 weeks, and then another 90 kids for the second 2 weeks.
Wow.
And they'll be going off across the loch in canoes, camping in the Ben Law's Range, and we're just facilitating it. We're making it happen. We also have a couple of hundred kids from Edinburgh that come up for the Youth Work Games. And again, we facilitate it. Something will be a sponsor. All they've got to do is get up here. Otherwise, it just wouldn't happen. There's no money for these things. And that's one of my challenges for government is what can we do to provide more for young people who don't vote typically, therefore they're not a priority, therefore governments don't give them money. So, but they're our future. That's why it's so important we put energy. So that's sort of my passion. And I think, today obviously we're going to talk about the passion and those questions that we've discussed and how we get to that. and various other questions I think Rupert has.
Yeah. David, just picking up on one of your points, that's a statistic over Dundee, shocking. Why is the life expectancy so bad in Dundee? Is it pure poverty, poor housing, or is there lots of other things like perhaps issue with drink and everything else around that? So why is it so bad in that particular area?
All the above. And I think that Dundee, this isn't an area of Dundee, so it doesn't sort of encapsulate all of Dundee, but the area that I'm working with, this is what the head teacher told me, it's 45 years. And yes, it's drugs, all the above mentioned. And a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling of lack of money, lack of finance, lack of ambition, lack of opportunity. And yes, I mean, it's pretty alarming, it really is. And I think it's sitting down with the schools, because that's where all the kids go to. And interesting enough, Dundee Bairns, who we do the catering through, the food bank, they give the food to the children at school, and then they take it home. There's a stigma about going to a food bank. People don't want to be seen to be going to the food bank. It's not good. So they're very cunning how they do that. And obviously you get a lot of intelligence from the children who are coming out of some of these areas. And you might have a single mum with 4 kids living in a high rise, no garden, trying to do their education because the kids can't go to school. You can imagine, they just don't, the problems that kind of come from that, with lack of help, do I pay electricity or do I pay for the food? Also, if they had an Aldi's in the area, that would save their food bills by 15%, 20%. But they don't. They've got a corner shop, which is like 3 times more expensive than Tesco's. So it's things like that. So I think there's a lot of social issues. We're working with 49 refugee families, many from Syria, who have landed in Dundee. Dundee didn't choose them; they chose Dundee. Dundee chose them, and there they are, not speaking a word of English, and we're trying to help them. Very intelligent people, had their own businesses, they're doctors, lawyers in Dundee, and they can't communicate, and they, some feel it's quite hostile. So it's a very interesting environment, and just getting my head around that, taking away from events, because we haven't had events. I've had my hands tied behind my back for a whole year, not allowed to do events. So it's been really fascinating. I've been cooking pizzas for the schools, for the community. We've got a mobile pizza oven from the school, so it's been a real insight. By God, we've got a lot to do, and it's not just Dundee. All the cities around the UK have their regions where they're really struggling financially. So it's not just Dundee, but Dundee, has a few accolades which we're trying to battle. Yeah,
it's really interesting as well. I think I remember you talking about this a little bit last year, but I think it's such an interesting point. And the reason I'm sort of drilling down this on a lot, because it ties in really well with the actual the main discussion point for today and the questions. That obviously this whole thing around the the doctors and nurses not going out, finishing very long shifts and not being able to go into the supermarkets to be closed and not being able to eat properly at the end of their shifts. You actually set that up originally, didn't you? Is that correct? With an association with the Scottish government, or what actually enabled you to be able to pull all those good things together? Because that was a fantastic undertaking, wasn't it?
Well, no, it was just an idea that I came up with, because we were, when it was let's go and clap on a Thursday night on the balcony. Well, we said, we played the bagpipes on the balcony, or the children did, and an owl replied. Now, that wasn't actually doing much good for the nurses. We live in the country, but maybe in the cities it provided a bit more morale. But we felt, well, let's do something a bit more practical rather than clapping from the balcony. Nobody can hear us because we're in the country. And then it was just all the interviews that came up. So it was an idea. We thought, well, let's be proactive. And then, which is interesting, we came up against the pressure and saying, oh, you can't do that. You'd be irresponsible going around and delivering. You might get COVID. You might spread it. All the typical worries that people have, and that goes back to having a passion for something. You're going to get knocked back. But again, so we ended up doing all the packing ourselves. It was just me. So we were going to get lots of volunteers coming in and helping. We were going to go to King's Cross Hospital and set up my soup kitchen, pizza oven. We got permission, bought £1,000 worth of goods. I got permission to go. Then I had the high Hegian coming in saying, no, stop this nutter from coming into our hospital with a pizza. What do you think you're doing? So then it went from that on to, well, let's go and deliver the food to the nurses. So it switched from being proactive in a hospital 24/7, handing out food and drinks and pizzas to the nurses and doctors. It was to then delivering the packages. So it was really an idea that just evolved. And then our caterers lent us an ex-Tesco van. We started off with sort of basic stuff from Booker's, and then we connected with House of Brewer and had slightly more luxurious items, which was it was a morale booster. That was the thing. It's not that the nurses and doctors couldn't afford it. It's they were on a long shift, and what they were getting is coming out, and the shelves are empty because everybody's grabbing the loo rolls, pasta, ragu, baked beans, nothing on the shelves. Those are the things that we struggle with in the food bank. And it was more about showing that, right, we're supporting you here, and here's the goodies. So we deliver the goodies to the hospital, beautifully packed, and it just put a massive smile on their faces, and that was the objective. Yeah, the morale, and it saved them having to go to the shops. They could just go home, cook a pasta, a baked tatty, or a lovely homemade burger, and not have to worry. So that's where the idea came from. And we worked with about 9 hospitals, Monday, Wednesday, Friday around Central, and then off to Tuesday, Thursday, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and the rest of Scotland, Dundee, Perth, and Forfar, Pitlochry for the other one. So
I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, first of all, that story in itself is really, really incredibly powerful, and I mean, the time as well. Being able to cause that much momentum and creates that much energy. And basically just get things done. You're one of these people, I think it'd be fair to say, David, you're probably not one of these people who takes no for an answer terribly easy. It's this steely determination which sees you through, I'd imagine. Is that right?
But it's just having a plan. I mean, I like a Tesco driver or an Asda driver. It's no different, from what they were doing. I wasn't working probably a bit longer because we had to pack the bags. But I think it's often you come up with a plan. And then we actually had an employer who said I was incredibly irresponsible. What did I think I was doing, going off driving around, whenever we were supposed to be at home? And that was somebody that worked for me, who's very angry that I was doing what I was doing. So often, sometimes it's the closest people that will stop you or say you're being. But of course, in hindsight, it was the right thing to do. I didn't catch COVID. I didn't spread it. I was like the only one in Scotland wearing gloves and wearing face masks and using hand sanitizer, and going around the shops at Booker, nobody's wearing face masks it was just extraordinary. I was like, am I the only one here that's listening to the news here? So I did all the things, and we just kept it. And I stayed in a separate room. So I didn't stay in the house when I came back, in a separate room, so I wasn't getting the family involved. And it was just something, I think, because we all feel helpless in situations like this. And if you can do something, then we must do something. Some of us can't do it. Some of us are not in position. We have a logistics company. That's what we do, organize events, so we can do things, put things together. And also, it was a lot of amazing help. Over £80,000 came in through donations. One donation of £50,000. A couple of 5,000, lots of 100s, lots of 50s, lots of 10s. And it was enabled us to keep it going until we ran out of money. Yes. And then we had the food banks with 100 families in Dundee, 100 families in Edinburgh. It's amazing the impact it made on those 200 families who normally wouldn't have the support. So I think it was just, in a time of crisis, at least we felt we were doing something rather than clapping on the balcony and just sitting
and taking active,
and not being able to do anything. And I think there were so many people around the country who felt helpless. That's why the NHS voluntary scheme was so successful, because thousands of people got out and helped with the NHS wonderful volunteer scheme. And it's all come out now that it lifted their morale, it lifted the sense of well-being because they were helping. I talked about that in the last one, how helping others often results in helping yourself. It lifts that sense of self-worth because you're doing something which has an impact on other people. Really powerful, really powerful. I wanted to give.
I must admit, I've been very encouraged, especially in the last 3 or 4 months as well, with especially the whole vaccine rollout, in the sense that, the whole thing suddenly around here, I don't know what it's been like in Scotland, but it's literally almost been run with military precision. There's so many people who have just volunteered as well to help to actually carry out those vaccinations as well. And I think over the last year or 18 months or so, we've seen the best. We've also seen the worst in people, but we've also, by vast majority, seen the best in people, I believe. And it's it makes me feel very proud. I also feel very guilty, if I'm honest, because if you look at some of the other countries, especially with the the wealthy countries, perhaps us, Brits, including obviously England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and that, of course, and the US, etc. Those countries which can afford to buy large amounts of vaccines versus other countries which, of course, are very scarce. And so I feel very humbled by that. It's amazing. Sort of moving on a little bit onto the quadrathlon. I mean, last year was the quadrathlon. You've repeatedly run every year. Is it for about the last 10 years or so? How long have you been running the quadrathlon for?
No, the quadrathlon go for this will be our 21st anniversary.
You're joking. 21 years.
So that's another classic example of a very tough event, which is a mile swim across a very cold loch, and it is very cold this year because we have a cold spring. Running 7 Munros. A Munro is a hill over 3,000 feet. Some of these hills are 4,000 feet, over 16 miles. That's a tough run. Then you're canoeing on a sit-on Malibu. These are teams of 2. 8 miles via Bikini Beach, where you get a pina colada and a strawberry daiquiri, back to the start. And then you cycle 38 miles round the loch, fish supper, black pudding in Killin, and you finish by chopping a melon. So again, that's an example of an event that 2 of us started 21 years ago, and we felt that, we could build this up. And people said we were mad. You'll never get people doing this. It's too much. You'll never, the hills alone are enough. But here we are, 21 years later, 350 to 400 people doing it every year, including Chris Cooper.
Yes, I remember telling him that. I think his friend Mike Kagan as well did his knees in.
That's right. And my view on that is anybody can do it, and that feeds between 30 and 40,000 children a year through Mary's Meals.
Wow.
£15 feeds a child for 1 year in Malawi at school. The child goes to school, £15 will cover that child for a whole year. Wow.
Yeah.
If that isn't an inspiration to put an event on, what is? So that's what excites me. We've been supporting Mercy Corps and Mary's Meals, so 2 key charities that do so much amazing humanitarian work around the world. And that's really been the driver. You put an event on, people have a wonderful challenge. It's a fun event, slightly wacky event. People have an amazing time, but they put back. One person raised 84,000 one year. One person raised 84,000 pounds. Divide that by 15, and that's how many children they fed. So and these are people we'll never meet. The benefit, the people that benefit from these events will never meet. So I think that was another example of having a passionate idea. A lot of people telling me I was totally mad. It was never going to work. Don't waste your time. Health and safety, too dangerous. They're going to drown. All the usual negative things that come out. Well, here we are, still going. Touch wood, nobody's drowned or died on the hill. And hopefully last year it didn't happen because of COVID. This year we're hoping, if Queen Nicola will allow it, that we have at least 150 people. We're waiting on the communique from the government, but we're hoping for about 150. So the main thing is we keep the event going, keep the momentum going.
Yes.
We don't have a sponsor this year, so that's the first year without a sponsor. So we're just going to really work it and make it work,
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, good. I was very intrigued by the expression Queen Nicola as well. I suppose Scotland has to have its own, doesn't it? So.
Well, I think that's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek there, but I think I'm not going to criticise politicians because I think I would not want to be in their situation. It's a very difficult situation, but the UK needs to fight as one, and I think there has been a bit of division on this. We need to work as a team. Mm-hmm. The vaccinations, as you alluded to, have been a huge success, world-beating success. And that is down to AstraZeneca and Oxford, So we have to see this as a team and not score political points because of the independence thing going on, which has come up again. And at a time like this, we need to work together and support. Yeah. And I think Britain does lead the way in that, even though we've made some mistakes leading up and throughout. And Scotland's no different from England. They've made just the same mistakes, whether it's care staff or outside, but very difficult. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. And I think they need all the support they can get. And it's great that we've got the vaccines, that's going so well, but we need to share it with the world now because it's not going to go away till we share it. We all know that. We all listen to the news, and we just need to start getting it out to these other countries because, we're not out of the woods until everybody's been vaccinated.
No, exactly. Now we're going to come back to a couple of these points a bit later on because I'm really keen to hear a bit more about some of the things you've organised over the next 6 months, which again is totally awe-inspiring. But I think what would be really nice is to get down to the main topics for today, and then we'll have a bit of recap, and also want to bring a guest in today as well. We've got, in fact, you may all want to say hello to him in the chat. Actually, James Cooper is going to be joining us for 3 or 4 minutes as well as part of this session today. James, I'll give you a shout out a bit closer to the time, so have that link ready at that point. So let's get down to the detail, as it were. We've got these points that we'd particularly like to run through, and this is very much leading with a passion, burning desire to get things, accept the mission before you start the challenges. I love the emphasis on the word before. Tap into the subconscious mind map with brilliant colors. Procrastination is the biggest killer, and simply persist. Tackle the obstacles and head on. Don't let anything slip. Now, these are big topics in themselves. Those of you who joined us, please do ask questions in the chat, raise lots of points. It makes things much more lively. And so let's get down to it. So if we focus on the passion, burning desire part first, David, could you tell us, sorry, I just moved myself a little bit so I'm in the right place. Can you just tell us a little bit in terms of what you mean by that? I think we've already been inspired by what you shared, but what tips would you give around that, especially with those people who perhaps been feeling a bit low or a bit dragged down by certain events, or perhaps they've got a business which tragically is going horribly wrong with all the consequences that has. How do people re-energize, recreate that passion so they can really move on?
Well, that's a good question. Well, the first thing is, what is passion? And I talked to a lot of young people who are at school or about to leave university, and it's a very difficult thing, because how can you be really passionate about something until you've tried things out? How do you know what you want to be? How do you know you want to be a dentist or a doctor when you're just on your A levels? Because you have to know what A levels you need to get to be a doctor or a dentist, and then you might hate it. So passion's a very difficult thing. And I have to say, probably, maybe 3% of people are passionate, really passionate about what they do. 3%. That's not very high, is it? And that means there's a lot of people doing things that they're not happy with. And that's not their fault. It's just the way things have landed. It's the pressures of life. It's a mortgage. It's paying the bills and doing all these things which we all struggle with. But if you can find something that you enjoy, because we're only on the planet basically for a few years, so we may as well enjoy what we do. In fact, if you can just see behind me, there's a picture of my dear grandfather, my mother's father, who was killed. I go that way. It's not the wrong way. There he is. He was killed in the Scots Guards in Anzio. My mum was only 3, and what a sacrifice he gave. But I just think, finding a passion, something that really inspires you, is not easy, and you have to try lots of different things before you find that passion. And interestingly enough, I wasn't fully passionate about what I was doing. I didn't start Wild Fox Fence until I was 35. So sometimes it's worth it, to keep persevering if you can, try different things, and then surely there must be something out there that it really excites you. What are you brilliant at? So you've got to think of what really excites you, what really inspires you. Because if you find something that inspires you and you're good at, then you'll be good at it. Then you'll enjoy it. And then it won't become like work. It will become like a way of life. So I've sort of been self-employed now for most of my life. I was probably unemployable. Dyslexic school, I was pretty hopeless exams. So I had to sort of work something out myself so that I was accountable to myself. But I did work for other people, hotel management, traveled around the world. But I found a passion, something I really enjoy, because I know that what I do has an impact. We put an event on, it has an impact, like the quadrathlon, like I've just described. So I think the first thing is to search. And it's not just pick it off the shelf, there's your passion, crack on and get on with it. You've got to try different things, and you've got to go through some ups and downs, and then you've got to figure out, if that is your passion, how you're going to make it work. Because we've got to pay the bills at the end of the day. We're all paying the rent, the mortgage, the food for the dogs, the car, the fuel, the list goes on and on and on. And life is very, very expensive, pressure's going up. And it's been a really tough year for us because we do events, and we've just not been allowed to do events, So furlough has been helpful. Which has enabled us to get off and do the wonderful work we've done. But again, it's been a really tough year because we've just not been allowed to do it, and we still don't quite know what we're allowed to do. Airbnb is back on again, and it's just trying to think, what can we do? So I think, and it's having that burning desire as well, that desire that you really want to do what you want to do. So I think, Rupert, you came up with that, or people who start up their business, it's something like 94% fail in 3 years. I can't remember.
It's about 80% fail in 5 and about 95% fail in 10. So,
yes, which is a horrific statistic. So you think of the millions and billions of pounds that people are investing in their business, whatever it may be, to think that only 5% are going to make it through after 10 years. That's a terrifying statistic. And if you tell people that probably put a lot of people off starting on their own. So it doesn't mean that if you want to work for you don't have to work for yourself. If you do, it's not easy, but it's certainly a wonderful way if you can make it work. But also working for other people, and you don't have to just be working for yourself to be passionate. You can work for an employee and be passionate. But the thing is to search. That's the main thing, is to search for that passion until you find it, and don't give up.
Wow. Yeah. So
if you give up on it, then you're not filling your life with passion. You've got to, you're not living the life as you want to if you're not passionate. So
and there's a disconnect in that area as well. So I'm really intrigued actually, because you speak to a lot of people, millennials, for example, people in their early 20s, and of course they may, for example, take a degree in a particular topic and then find they actually start to work in that particular role or that job, and a year or two later end up by hating it, and they end up by doing something completely different. You mentioned that you had a bit of a career change, made a big decision in your life. Was it at the age of 33, 34, or what was a big catalyst that led to that change, which led you to forming to Wild Fox Events, if I've got the name correct?
Well, I think you're probably referring to, and I was actually doing a world trip at the time, working my way around the world, and I arrived in Australia with 20 quid left on me, as is before credit cards and mobile phones, and so I got a job in a big wheat farm, raised up some money, and then carried on. And I was in New Zealand, got caught in a big storm and a volcano, spent 18 hours in a survival bag.
Wow.
And it was at that time I thought, well, no, what am I doing in my life? What can I do? What am I going to do that's going to really help me put something back, do something which is going to make a difference in other people's lives? And that was, I suppose, it was a turning point in a way. And but I think it was a couple of years later that then a friend of mine said, "Do you fancy walking 32 Munros in 4 days?" And I said, "That sounds like a good idea." And that was the birth of the Caledonian Challenge. So that was a Caledonian Challenge, which we built up to 1,600 people walking 54 miles down the West Highland Way in 24 hours, raised £1 million a year for Scottish charities, and then that led on to many other things. And that was really the start of it. So that was that 32. Only two of us finished the 32 Munros. Most of them dropped out with heat stroke and exhaustion, and then we moved on to the West Highland Way. But that was the trigger of something. We've got something here that can actually work, because we built up 600 people. Let's do other things. So that's really that was the catalyst. Because often in life you're searching for things. You know roughly what you want, but that sometimes there has to be a catalyst, a change of circumstances, a movement of career or choice for you to get onto the right track. You can't just automatically think you're going to go on the right track, because that's not the way it works. We've got a daughter doing her GCSEs. She hasn't got a clue what she wants to do. How does she know what she wants to do? And it's until you start doing things and experiencing things and going out and work experiences, do these triggers start coming off, and these excitements and these desires start developing. So that's really why I just, when I say to young people, just get out there. I'm a great believer in the gap year. If you can afford it, get out. Or work. Of course you can afford it, because you can work and travel like I did.
Yeah.
You don't have to rely on the bank of mum and dad. You just do it yourself and get out there and you work on a wheat farm or wherever, or in a vineyard or kibbutz, and just get out, meet people. And I think the importance of getting out of the UK and realizing how important other countries are. It's not UK is not the UN, the B end of life. That you get out and meet other people, and then you build up that compassion. When I said I hitchhiked from London to Athens, is in the book as well. I was a refugee. I was a bum. I ran out of money. I was hitchhiking, no money, all the way down to Greece. I met a friend down there who lent me some money, but I really empathized with what refugees are going through. And that's no comparison to what refugees are going through now. Imagine that being your town's being bombed, your house is gone, you've got your kids, you're walking across, you've probably got injuries, you're carrying all your life belongings with you. and you're being abused and shouted at and yelled at and beaten up by border guards. No, but that hitchhike to Athens really built that compassion, and so part of that journey is building up compassion, which kind of steered me more towards raising money for charities through events. The vehicle events, endurance events, and then there was the why are we doing this? Are we just doing it to torture people on the hill? No, we're doing it to challenge people, but also to raise money for people that really need it.
Good causes. Yeah, I love the comment that Renato's made in the chat. Actually, I can't see all the conversations coming up because I can't obviously focus on you at the same time. But Renato makes the point: the greatest failure is not to try. And at the end of the day, it's this steady determination. Even if it does go horribly wrong, at the end of the day, you've tried, and next time round, you'll if you don't succeed, you'll certainly be a long way to it, and you will ultimately have success through that determination as well, won't you? So thanks for sharing that, Renato, and for everyone else for clarifying that. And also, Simon, thanks for your feedback there. Coming to the sort of next topic, really, we've probably talked around this a little bit, but tell us a little bit what you mean about accept the mission before you start the challenge. I was very intrigued by the word before. What's your sort of thinking around that?
Yes, because it kind of links to procrastination, but people putting off. They have a great idea, but put off. But accept the mission. So it really means building up that commitment value. So making accepting the fact that you're going to do it and want to do it before you start the challenge. Because if you don't accept it and have that agreement, it's very easy to cop out. It's very easy to come up with an excuse. So I talk about the word commitment, which is the most undervalued and underused word. So commitment, this is the definition of commitment. Commitment is doing the thing you said you would do long after the mood you said it in has left you.
Oh, wow.
So
can you repeat that again?
Yeah, it is very important, this word. This is probably one of the most important words that you'll ever come across if you master it. And it's basically the commitment is doing this thing you said you would do long after the mood you said it in has left you. So what I mean by that is people are very good at saying, oh, yes, I'll be there. Yes, no problem. I'll come and do that run with you. And I'll see you at the pub on Monday. And then you don't turn up. Where were you, John? You said you were going to come to the pub. I forgot. I had a sore head. Lie. 9 times a day, it's a lie. And the amount of time you spend covering up all those lies. So that's why that's why the word commitment is so important. So you think really hard about before committing to something, and then once you commit to something, you then make a decision whether you're going to do it or not. But once you said yes, you must do it, because your word is the only power you have in your life. Yeah. So if you start going around to people and saying yes, I'll do that, and don't do it, you become don't rely on David because he always says yes and never does it. You soon get the reliability of somebody that doesn't do anything, and that's the only power we have. Yeah. You asked me to come on today, Rupert, and if I hadn't turned up, that I'd have blown my in your eyes. I'd have been unreliable, quite rightly, for not turning up and committing to this talk today. So that's an example. So when I say,
David, I knew you were going to turn up, and every time you join in on something, you always excelled in everything you get across. So I knew that wouldn't happen unless technology got in the way, and even then you'd find a way of doing it. So sort of moving on a little bit there, because I also wanted to have time to bring James on as well. We talk a little bit about the subconscious and mind map with brilliant colours. I'm particularly intrigued by that because, like you, actually, I've never been tested though, but I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic. I get words and letters the wrong way around. I can't write. You asked Muriel whether anyone could read my writing, let alone myself, and she would agree 100% with that one. And if I was a doctor, people would be dying for getting the wrong prescriptions. So I can't pretend to know, obviously, people who are very severely dyslexic how affects them, but mind mapping for me and having different colours is actually very powerful. But I'm really intrigued to know what you mean by this and what context.
Well, the mind is incredibly powerful. You know, they say that we only use sort of 5% of our mind, and part of the other 95%, I think, is using our subconscious mind and the power of this amazing brain that we have. And this is just my perspective, and it's different for everybody else. But I find that when I have a project, because we create events, I get a big A5 sheet out and lots of color pens. I use the really nice set of color pens, and I get it all down on one big sheet of paper, the whole concept of the event. So I've just been down to the South Downs. I'm a non-exec director of London Scottish, so I'm planning a 24-hour event along the Green Sands Way from Hazelmere all the way through onto the North Downs Way, which is part of the Pilgrims route, finishing near Oxted. And you know, we're hoping to have this event in October with 500 people. So you know, that starts off with a big plan. I've got a massive map, which you can probably see on earlier on the sofa there, and I've planned it out, and I'm starting, and I walked it. So I went, the new girl we've taken on. So I took her on the 2-day recce of the route, 50 miles. She knows it's very tough, but she did it really well. And we were just basically programming our mind into the subconscious by visiting all those sites, lots of pictures, photographs, colors. And by doing that, what you're starting to do is live the project. Your subconscious mind is starting to absorb all the information. And as you sleep, your mind creates a blueprint of how to make this work. And what doesn't work for me are linear notes. Writing linear notes, really boring. That doesn't stick in the mind. It's got to be visual, fun, colorful maps, lots of pictures. You know, so you're setting goals and you're really keen to have this particular type of house. You need a picture of the house, and you need to have that picture on your goal set. And you have that. You know, if you want a particular car, you want to have a picture of the car. Very powerful. And whether it's an event or project, whatever you're doing, the visualization of what you're doing is very, very important. And then what's also fascinating, whatever you put, this is my little mind map of today. I don't know if you can see it very well. Whatever you put on the mind map happens. So if you're writing down things and numbers, your mind will keep harassing you till you've done that thing. If it's not written down, it's not on the agenda. It's off the radar. You know. So what I would urge people to do is to get books on mind mapping. And just practice it on little things and build up, and you'll be amazed at how the subconscious mind stores what you've written, and then it comes up with all these questions. So you might go to bed with a couple of queries. You're not sure, how am I going to do that? And while you're sleeping, the ideas start coming up. Sometimes I get up in the middle and write a note down, make a note of it. I think the subconscious mind is something which is hugely undervalued, under-researched, under-practiced, and it's something that really inspires me. Here's another picture which you may have seen at the start. That's me on my penny farthing. I've just done 184 kilometers wearing a kilt and a Roman helmet around the Highlands, which is not flat. I understand you almost had a slight
crash at the bottom too, didn't you? When your front brake didn't work very well on your.
And there's my Praetorian Guard. So again, that was a kind of wacky event, fundraiser event for the local school for transformational bursaries. But being a governor of the school, I had to lead by example, do something slightly dotty. And I followed lots of Scottish Roman forts. We had a Roman element to it. Yeah, a couple of near ones. Penny farthings aren't safe. And the kilt got caught in the spokes a couple of times. But again, that was a visualization. I had a massive map of the 184-kilometer route through the Highlands, all the Roman block of forts, all the amazing systems with the Romans. You know, it wasn't just Hadrian's Wall, by the way, and the Antonine Wall. A lot happened north of the Antonine Wall. And that was up in the school for 2 weeks so people could see. Raised 12,000, so that wasn't too bad. A couple of near crashes, but I got round it in 14 hours. And that's an example. You know, I could easily have said, a week before, no, I don't feel like it. But again, that's another example. If you commit to something, you follow it through. Because if I were just to say I can't be bothered, I don't feel like it. What's that going to do for my reputation? Oh, don't ask him again. He's going to let you down. So
exactly,
and that's kind of an extreme example. Okay, that's slightly mad, but anything you do in life, if you can commit to it and follow through, it will just build out that reliability, and then you'll attract more people in your business that will trust you because what you said you were going to do. I mean, the last thing I felt like doing, quite frankly, was a 50-mile walk last week, but I committed to it, went down, did it, and came back again because I committed to it. So I'm very careful. This is the other thing. I'm very careful before I commit. Unless I know I'm going to do it. I don't say when somebody asks me something straight away, yeah, that's a great idea, I'll do it, which is what a lot of us do just to get the person off the telephone. But I say, well, that's a great idea that, walking up Everest, but can you give me a couple of weeks and I can think about whether I can do that or not, whether I can afford it, or whether it's going to work, or whether I can put the training in. So the great thing is to say, look, can I get back to you on that? Because that's quite a commitment. And often people are also asking you to do things which may seem on the face of it, not very much, but sometimes it can mean a lot of extra work, a lot of extra planning and time, because time is precious. And before you know it, you're spending 3 weeks on helping this person out, which is not helping you at all. So often you have to be good at saying no as well, and thinking about before you say yes. Because when you say yes, that is it.
And then you've got to do it. You've got
to follow it through, because if you don't, you become unreliable.
Right, exactly. Now we're going to have a very slight change of gear just for about 2 or 3 minutes. And in that time also, James, if you could very kindly click the link I gave you earlier on, remembering to mute your speaker if you're watching via YouTube or Facebook to avoid acoustic feedback. So click the link and we'll see you come into the green room, and I'll bring you in at an appropriate point if that's all right. But what we're going to do is a very quick roundup of what's coming up in the next week or 10 days. And David, we've got a couple more questions I'd love to ask you, and also with James as well. So just bear me a split second. There we go. So that's what we've been talking about today, and we're going to come back to that. What we're going to look at is a little bit around next week. So our guest next week is going to be Tim Pipiat, who's going to be talking about considering a merger or acquisition, or equally if you're needing to raise capital, then he's going to be discussing what are your reasons for buying. Obviously, that's more of a merger or acquisition. And do you have a clear business plan? We can clearly articulate what pitfalls should you consider, what are the right skill sets you're required for a successful outcome, what impact should you be expecting from transaction, how to measure success. And Tim has got lots to share. I know he's involved in some very exciting projects, some of which I probably can't talk about without his permission, but I think he'll be very forthcoming with a lot of that anyway. And if you would like to join us for this as well, you can register for any of these sessions via the homepage on our website, including the next mini conference, the on-demand webinar, and the live streams as well. And you can also complete what we class as sales and marketing diagnostic. Now, these sessions are about helping you and supporting you in your business growth. Everything does have to start around you. And we very much recognize that running a business, or it could be a very lonely journey, whether it's a company of 1 or a company of 1,000. And it's about building on solid foundations. And if you enjoy these sessions, do feel free to share. And also set reminders there as well. And what I'd like to just touch on very briefly as well, this is something very new, which we're piloting next Tuesday, and it's the Wealth Growth Club. And with that, we're going to be talking or discussing, it's not going to be in this format, it's going to be much more of a strategy breakout session, be a maximum of between 8 and 12 people, and we'll be focusing on your why, your motivation, what sort of really drives you, your personal plans in terms of what you want moving forwards. If you run a business, you don't have to run a business, take part in this. What are your business plans around that? Also, creating financial wealth. That isn't just about money. It's also about outcomes and everything else that goes around it, what strategy can put in place around that, and also your happiness, your future. And around that, if you could all just make a note of Muriel's mobile number there as well, if that's all right, which is 07852 329 762, because we're limiting it to only about a maximum of 10 to 12 people. Basically, it's more as a first come, first serve. We've already got 2 books on just from today, and we haven't even started yet. So it's 07852 329 762. If you can make next Tuesday, send a text and just confirm you'd like to join, and Muriel send an invite over the next day or 2. If you can't do this next one, then just indicate you'd like to join on a future one, and we'll keep you informed over what's coming up. And just also a quick reminder of David's details as well. David is contactable via davidfoxpitt.com. David, does that also link through to your other website as well? That's it.
Yes,
address?
yes, it does. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because David's got two really good websites. In particular, what I'd love to have done is showed some video footage today, but because of lack of time, we couldn't download it in time to upload to this platform. David's phone number there is 01567820409. And David's email address is david@wildfoxevents.com. In fact, got a clue for the other domain in that email address. So I think what we'll do is we'll get back to the topic as a point in question. So just bear me a second while I try and revert everything back to how it was before. So David, leading on to the next part of today's session, I'd also like to bring in our good friend James, who's joined us today, and he's got he's got a big question, I think, for you. So let me bring David in. Have we got David there? We did. Sorry, David, I do apologise. James, sorry, I do apologise for names. Is James there?
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, good. Excellent. So, James, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it was a little bit last minute. And I know David was wanting to try and reach you down this, and in reality, also have got your phone number. So I'm sure between you both, you'll exchange details by email and you'll sort that between you. But James, you've been working very hard to set up a venture in the Edinburgh area and now moving to Glasgow. First of all, can you give us a very quick introduction in terms of what you had started to set up and do?
Sure. So
thank you for a little bit on your computer, by the way, because they're getting a bit of feedback. So
sure, okay. Hopefully that's okay now.
That's better. That's a lot better. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Doorstep, yeah, as you said, is something that was set up in Edinburgh over the past couple of years, and the idea is to try and make it easier for people to buy more sustainable from their independent shops, be it butchers, bakers, greengrocers. There's a way in which we can make it work for any budget, and to really help people make it seem less uninviting to actually switch and out some of these key ingredients from the shops to a local. So if it's a budgetary constraint, maybe it's a case that we can match them up with rescue me food from some of these local shops, like the yellow labels type stickers that you might get from supermarkets. Off the part of this has been very much around trying to grow an audience that's interested in this, and you have your niche. For me, that niche might be someone that's particularly interested in sustainability, or they want to improve their personal environmental impact. So my question, David, was kind of much more around how do you nurture that core audience? Obviously, with lots of your different event fundraising, you're going to have a similar type of person that's going to be interested. How do you go about trying to reach out and find these people initially, and how do you go forwards with trying to grow that audience as you continue, as the years have gone by with the events?
Yeah, hello, James, and hopefully we can chat. I'm sorry we haven't been able to speak before this meeting, but I think yes. I mean, every event is different. So, for example, if you take the Caledonian Challenge, which you may have heard of or may not have heard of, we set that up in 1999. And that started with a small group of 16 people walking 32 rows in 4 days. And then we realized that it was too tough, so we moved on to the West Highland Way, and we built that up to 1,600 people. So how did we get the 1,600 people doing the event? Well, that's very much, we had the charity called Foundation Scotland, my company, Well Fox Events, and we had a sponsor. In those days, it was called State Street Bank. So what we did is we worked very closely together. And also there was Angus MacDonald, who had a company called Financial News, and he put ads in various papers. So it's very much a four-pronged approach of us all sharing the walk, the challenge, because it was a tough challenge, 54 miles in 24 hours, with the community through our networks. We also had a thing called an advisory board. So we set up a thing called advisory board where you've got key contacts. These are high-powered contacts that would feed through to me. So, for example, there could be a CEO of a bank, and they would, I would write to them, and they would, write to their contacts. So David's going to contact you about coming round. But the key here was that I would do sometimes 6, 7 presentations a day, going around City of London, Edinburgh, to businesses, telling them about this amazing event, about training and preparation. So it's very, I know we've moved on slightly more to social media, so much more is done on social media. So this is going back 20 years. But having said that, still that connection of going out to people is so important, and not hiding behind the computer and social media. You've got to get out and see people. And I think we forget that, you know, we don't have to see people anymore. It's all done on the media. Well, a bit of both. And I think social media is another way, but it's quite fickle, social media. You never quite know who's going to come on. So from my experiences, is the key people involved in the event, in your case, in the food business, getting people to buy sustainable food from local products. It's just trying to work with those communities, and then it will grow, and then word of mouth grows. But my method is getting out and seeing people presenting, because asking people to do 54 miles when most people have only done 10 miles in their lives at once is a huge ask. So you've got to tell them how to train, the sort of kit they're going to wear, how they're going to build up to that, and the companies like it, you know. And then before you know it, we have a couple of successful years. It just mushrooms out because people talk about it. If the event's successful and it's well run, and then it expands. And then you've got in those days, Angus MacDonald was doing adverts through Financial News, a big picture of a pair of muddy boots in some newspapers, and lots of inquiry. Not many, but a few came in that way. But word of mouth is the most powerful. So I think in your situation, you know, for example, we got a good contact called Angus Buchanan Smith, who lives out near the Pentlands, and he has an amazing box where they do veg boxes, and they've got about 400 beautifully put together veg boxes that they deliver to people around Edinburgh, you know, locally grown stuff. And that's going really well now, you know, and every year another 20%, 25% growth. It's all locally produced, you know, all labeled where it comes from, local. It's not coming in from Spain. Just so they know the carbon footprint's good. So I think it's with your thing, it's very much a word of mouth, probably mainly through social media, because you're not going to go out and present to people like I do, because it's buying food is slightly different from, you know, doing a 54-mile walk or a challenge event. Does that help at all? Does that answer the question?
Yes, for sure. I was going to say, it actually led me on to a bit of a follow-up question, which is kind of asking around the work you're doing with Wild Time as well, where you're trying to get people to spend more time away from being on social. Is this still something that obviously it's a bit of a hard one, isn't it? Because the whole idea is that you probably have to promote to access those people digitally, but at the same time, it's about encouraging them to come away from it.
Yes. Yeah. So what was the question there?
It's something that's still highly important to go forwards with the social media as the way in reaching that core audience as a way of that word of mouth through the social media, as opposed to just.
Well, you're right. I mean, having said that, I'm not a great social media user myself. My wife Joanna, she does a lot of that. I find it quite intrusive. I don't like being on the phone all the time. I'm all about getting people out, getting people challenging themselves. You know, we do a lot of Wild Time offline, special walks through beautiful areas we live up here at Loch Tay. So I'm kind of more, you know, I don't like being on it all the time, but I know that is the way we're moving. My daughters are on it the whole time. I'm fighting to get them off it the whole time. It drives me absolutely mad. But that is the way we are moving, you know. I think we have to embrace it, accept it. But I do think we have to monitor the usage of it. I think there's too much of it. And my experience, very simply, of going to Facebook, you see a video, and before you know it, you're hooked into about 10 videos. And because they're very catchy, but it's an awful waste of time, a lot of it. So it's how we sift it, you know, and we've got to guard about how much time we're using it. I think at the moment we're over using it. But that is the way the world is going. Everything is done on social media. Everything has been promoted, and we have to work with it. But I think we have to moderate our usage, because I can see the damage it's doing, and the fact that the kids aren't getting out as much. They're resorting to it. You know, they're in all those games they're playing, and I think they get it too early, and it stops them from going out. It stops them from experiencing the outdoor world, because everything is virtual. Everything's on the phone. So I think there's a danger of it. Maybe it's slightly old-fashioned coming from me, but that's how I'm feeling. That's how I'm reading it, and I think it'll moderate. I think people realize, that they are spending too much time. There's an app that tells you how many hours you're spending on it every year. People, what, about 8 hours? God, it's terrible. So hopefully people will realize, but it's here to stay, and we just have to manage it.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I can't believe it, but officially we're up on the hour at 6 o'clock, but we'll perhaps run for another 3 or 4 minutes if that's all right. James, stay on here as well, because we'll come into the green room afterwards. So just stay on at the end of this call. But David, I've got a lovely question I'd love to ask you around this, and I think James, you're actually a really good example of this too, because sort of final point really was about simply persisting and tackle the obstacles head on. I think that sort of developing any business like you have, James, as well, has been quite an experience for you, a tough journey. On the other hand, I think you've been quite successful raising some grant funding as well, haven't you? So through different initiatives. But so your persistence has clearly stuck through, because you're still here 18 months later fighting hard to achieve your goals, which is fantastic. Some examples, David, in terms of persistence, tackling obstacles head on. We've talked about some of the obstacles you faced around that. But if someone on this live stream today is facing a particular obstacle, and either for themselves and their business, what tips would you give them to actually help them to deal with those challenges head on?
Well, that's a very good point, and I think they talk about the millennials who are maybe not so good at accepting failures and things that are going wrong, and I believe what we've got to do is we must embrace failure. I've got challenges, negatives head on, and we must embrace things that go wrong and challenges as part of the deal. And this is something I talk about when I do talks about positive velocity going to schools, that we must expect failure. Nothing ever works first time. It's not, you're not going to succeed at everything, and the trouble is, I think when people fail at something, they think that's it, they give up and they stop, and they don't carry on. So my point here is that we have to embrace that when you're starting out in a business, whatever you're doing, people are going to be negative. People are going to say you can't do it, you're not capable, you're not qualified. And if we take it to heart, we will give up. It's as simple as that. So it's having a sort of understanding that, to be successful in the long term, you're going to have to come across a lot of hurdles. And the example I give, when I set up an event called the Maggie's Monster Bike and Hike, that's, we had 1,000 people walking, cycling 30 miles, followed by a 14-mile walk from Fort William to Inverness for Maggie Cancer Care Centres, over 1,000 people doing it. And I met a chap from the forestry, who had to get permission. He said, over my dead body is this event going to come through here? And I could easily have said, right, okay, well, that's the whole thing's off, it's not going to work. But, and so I just took, and rather than saying, I said, yes, fantastic, need 5 more negative things like that, then I know I'm on track. Because, if you don't build it in, that, whatever you're doing in life, that you're going to get 5 or 6 knockbacks. If you don't build that in as part of the plan and embrace it, and that particular person, I won't mention his name, became a great fan, because found out his wife actually got cancer, and she started to use the Maggie Centre, and he became a great fan of it. So often it's timing in life, and maybe you've got somebody on a bad day, or maybe it's not work. But the thing is to embrace the failure as part of it. I mean, I when I was doing my Land's End John O'Groats on the penny farthing, so the same penny farthing in 2019, we were doing up to 90 miles a day. I wasn't wearing my kilt then, by the way. I was wearing Lycra. This is a recent mad thing. I wasn't wearing a Roman helmet either. But I had a crash in Lancaster. So halfway mark, I did what's called a header, which normally kill you or break your neck in Lancaster, because we got lost and we were trying to get back on the track. And I was in a lot of pain, scraped all the side down, scraped and a lot of bleeding. And luckily didn't break anything. But I was able to continue. But that could easily have stopped me. I could have said, right, that's it. I'm not going to risk it anymore. But, it's having that, going back to that commitment. I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to do this. And I know that I'm going to have some problems and challenges. I might, got hit by a couple of cars with wing mirrors, and there are a few, lost control going downhill, clipped in, which is terrifying on a penny farthing. So there are a few moments which, we reflect on. But again, that's quite. But I think it's building it in. So whatever you do in life, you build these things in as part of the deal. And if you don't accept that, don't start, because if you don't accept that you build in, there are going to be challenges and problems, which you will face. There's no doubt about it. Like we faced it through COVID, right? It's killed all our events, disaster. Many businesses will never come back again. This year has been a disaster for thousands of businesses and people. But it's, it's how we deal with it that is really important, and we accept it. So hopefully that makes sense. And also procrastination. Don't forget, procrastination was one of the points we missed out, is the biggest killer. And that goes with commitment. If you've committed to something, you're less likely to procrastinate and put off, because you've made that deal with yourself that come hell or high water, you're going to follow it through, and you're going to give it a go, and you're going to accept the things that go wrong, because that is life. And if you don't accept it, you won't succeed. And as you said, Rupert, 95% of businesses fail within 10 years. That's a hell of a record, that. 95%.
Yeah.
Fail within the 10 years. So that's quite a sobering thing. And the question is, why? Why does it happen? Because there isn't the vision, there isn't the passion, there isn't the long-term projection, there isn't the acceptance that shit's going to hit the fan and you're going to get knocked down. And are you going to get up? And are you going to continue when the shit hits the fan? Because it will, and it's how you accept that, which is so important,
No, I think there's some very profound points there as well. And I have to say as well, I think part of it's done that our teachers, the schools do an amazing job, but unfortunately, the education system generally doesn't prepare people very well for running their own businesses. We're still geared up to the industrial age where, you go into a job. These days, people are much more entrepreneurial. They want to start up their own business, but they may have got no skills in cash flow, profit and loss, all these other really important things as well. So I'm sure this failure rate could be considerably reduced as well. So, but I mean, some really good points have come out today. I really appreciate, David, you're being very generous with your time today, and thank you very much for joining us, and James also for contributing, and Muriel's been making sure behind the scenes everything's been working, and any problems we're sort of dealing with. So those of you who joined us today, do feel free to join us next Thursday, as usual, for live streams. You know how to do that. And also, if you want to join us for our pilot, wealth growth session group, then do message Muriel, text Muriel, and she'll make sure that you get an invite if we've still got some spaces left. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.